Now, I wanted to introduce my two colleagues. One is Brian Beatty, who works with me at GIS Planning. Hello, Brian.
Hello, everyone.
And the second person that I'd like to introduce is Catherine Long, and she works at Ponca City. She's a small biz and information manager. Hello, Kat.
Hello.
Thank you both for joining us here today. I am going to turn this over to Brian now, and he is going to take it from here. Brian, let me know if you see that up on your screen.
Yes, I do.
Excellent.
First, thank you for everyone for joining us today. We were going to be profiling Ponca City, Oklahoma, home of Kat Long, and I'm going to show initially ZoomProspector.com's profile of the city. I think, Kat, maybe we should start with if you could provide us an overview of Ponca City as a community, kind of how it relates to the rest of the state, and kind of where you guys fit in.
Sure. Ponca City is a micropolitan. We're right around 25,000 in population, and we're about 23 miles from the Kansas border. So our county sits right on the Kansas-Oklahoma line. And our county's about 48,000. We are not the biggest county or the smallest by any stretch of the imagination. There's about 70 counties in Oklahoma. We're rural in location, but we are very retail-centric for our county of 48,000. And just to let everybody know, we are not a bedroom community to anywhere. In fact, one of our favorite slogans is within walking distance of nowhere, 100 miles from everywhere, because we are about 100 miles from Wichita, Tulsa, Oklahoma City. So we do not operate as a bedroom community to anyone. In fact, we operate a lot like the bigger cities in the way we do things, because we are very much kind of a little micropolitan city. We also like to use the term strategically rural as well, because sometimes companies don't want to be in the middle of a metropolitan area or a big MSA area. So we like to keep that forefront. We do have free Wi-Fi here in Ponca City. So we have a great Wi-Fi network. You don't have to have a carrier here if you don't want to. Phones work better here. I get a little frustrated when I go to bigger communities where they don't have free Wi-Fi.
Is that hosted by the city of Ponca City?
That is hosted by the city of Ponca City. We changed over our utilities to Wi-Fi about 6 years ago, and they just went ahead and made a deal with AT&T, and now we have free Wi-Fi across the city.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, it is a selling point for us. It is one of the things that we talk about a lot. Like I said, it's very cool, because once you enter the city limits, your laptop works, your phone works better. I mean, you are strategically rural, and we have a really good city-based hardline as well that is incredibly fast, that is also on the back of AT&T network, and it's a dual network, so it doesn't go down very often at all. We are primarily a manufacturing community, though we have manufacturers that are working a lot on diversification. For many years, Ponca City was an oil and gas company town, ConocoPhillips. Now we have a refinery. Phillips 66 is here. They employ about 800, about 1,100 with their contractors. And we are not a company town anymore. We are a town with companies in it, though we are primarily manufacturing.
Excellent. And I also noticed what leaps out on me looking at this infographic profile. You're a pretty well-educated community.
Yes.
Overall.
And that's the legacy of the oil and gas. Because we had Phillips here, ConocoPhillips, you had a lot of engineers, you had a lot of masters, you had a lot of PhDs, and that kind of does a trickle down in the area. We also are really close to Oklahoma State University, which is a large land-grant university. I don't know if you guys know Oklahoma, but there are two universities here. One is red and one is orange. There is Oklahoma State and there is the University of Oklahoma. So we also have a small two-year college, Northern Oklahoma College, NOC, which is about 10 miles to our west. And then we have a university center here, which has contracts with about 13 different universities. So you don't really have to go outside of Ponca City to work on your bachelor's, master's, or PhD.
Okay, excellent. So,
on a higher level.
So we could talk then, I think, now about Go Ponca, the organization that you work for, and maybe some of the challenges that you faced and how you were dealing with them. Particularly, you made it pretty clear diversification of the economy is very important to you.
It is very important coming from an oil and gas standpoint, and oil and gas is one of those ebb and flow things. So I work for Ponca City Development Authority, PCDA, and Go Ponca is our website. It just is a really nice rally cry, Go Ponca, and we use it a lot that way. We are funded by a half-cent sales tax, so we're a little bit different than some economic development organizations, though if you can get a half-cent sales tax passed in your community, by all means, go for it. It is a great way to make yourself a little bit more autonomous and able to take that initiative to do something a little bit different, like have databases like GIS planning on your website, or have access to data information like MC Esri, or be able to offer your companies a little bit more leeway when they want to diversify. Maybe you can help with land, maybe you can help with buildings, that kind of thing. So as a rural community, yes, we have a little bit more, we have to be a little bit more persuasive when we sell ourselves because we aren't a bedroom community. You're talking about being 100 miles away from everybody. And but we're also, some of the great things that we can show with the GIS planning is exactly the things that you're showing right now, what our high school, what our college, and in this same area, when you put in the radius, say you put in a 45-mile radius, you can show that your numbers are going to go up just with that drive time, and everybody in Oklahoma drives. That's just a given. How far you drive is kind of the parameters that you're looking at. We just try to paint a better picture, a clearer picture, and sometimes, I won't lie, a prettier picture of our community with the information. We can use data in so many ways, and it can be manipulated in so many ways that the website is many times the first site that people see when they're looking at Ponca City, either for their company or to move here as a worker, or maybe to start a business or expand a business.
Very good. And I've been showing our demographics intelligence component, which is embedded in the Go Ponca website. Kat, maybe you could talk a little bit about what led you to look at GIS planning and the data options that you chose.
We are actually old clients of yours from way back when. We had you guys back in 2006, 2007, and we loved it.
Now that was our Zoom Prospector, which is a site selection tool.
Exactly, and it was great, but boards change and focuses change, so we had let it go away. But again, we were in a diversification, a recruitment kind of timeline. I said, let's look at GIS again, and your widgets are really cool, and they're very helpful when you're painting that kind of picture. You have the information, which I love. You have the mapping. You have the graphs, which can be incredibly cohesive and great when you're marketing to people. I loved the different tabs on each one of these. You have your basic demographic information, but then you also have consumer expenses, which we use a lot internally. Say we have somebody who's looking to open, well, actually, I had somebody in here who was looking to open a deli, and looking at food and beverages, looking at what people spend on entertainment and all of those different areas helps us to better align what is that business going to look like and what's their 1-, 3-, and 5-year business plan developing into. So this is information that you can use both internally to your people who are wanting to start businesses from your constituency, as well as when you're looking at companies coming in from outside your area who either want to start a business or expand a business or better align their business with existing businesses in Ponca City. If you go over to the labor force, I just used this yesterday. We had a company call that was looking for number of employees in a type of business. It was in machining and manufacturing. They were looking for comparable pay rates. So we went here and we looked at manufacturing and how many people were in it. Then they asked pay rate question, and then I went over into another database and was able to pull up machinists and what they make per hour. But the conversation started here, and it started on our website, which is the main goal, is driving people to your website so they can see the information that's available there.
So in this case, the manufacturer came to this website, got enough information to know that they wanted to have a conversation with you, and then reached out to you directly?
Yes. And
excellent.
They didn't know exactly what they were looking for. They just knew that they could see that this is where they wanted to go, and then they picked up the phone and said, hey, can you find this exact information that I'm looking for? And we could, and we did, and they left happy. We gave them 3 or 4 different avenues of information as far as median hourly income for our area as opposed to national. So it is very helpful to start that conversation. Many times it drives them to us when they wouldn't normally pick up the phone and call us. They would try to find the information, pardon the expression, God help us, on the internet, Googling it. And we really don't want them to do that, because a lot of times, I would say 9 times out of 10, they're going to find the wrong information.
And I notice here, of course, our software is providing the data on household income and how it's distributed in the community. And then on the right, you have your own widget with a cost of living index calculator.
Yes, we like to say you can actually compare bananas to bananas on the cost of living index calculator, because that bananas is one of the things you pull prices for every quarter. So if we have somebody that is skilled and educated who lives in West Virginia, and they want to compare what their bills are in West Virginia. I don't know who's in West Virginia. Go down to WV and let's see who we got. Anybody? Anybody? Yeah, there we go. Morgantown. They want to see how they compare. So the composite for us is 90.9. So we are 90.9% of the national average. And Morgantown is 103.6%. So we're 13% lower right off the bat if you look at the composite. And then you can go through and you can see, you know, is it grocery, is it housing, is it health, is it miscellaneous? And again, like I said, bananas to bananas, you can see what the difference in the pricing is. And, you know, sometimes you're not selling the main breadwinner. Sometimes you're selling the trailing spouse. Sometimes you're not selling your site selector, you're selling the president of the company. So the more ammunition you can have, the better they can make their decision looking at subjective information or objective information. You're not coloring it at all. As much as we'd like to control everything that's out there, this is pretty much something they can look at 2 o'clock in the morning when they're trying to make their decisions and compare things. So we try to give them as much information as possible, but we want to be able to recreate some good information when we're presenting to them too.
And we can take that further with another of our intelligence components, where we can allow people to actually do a side-by-side comparison of, in this case, any town within the Ponca or Kay County area. And let's just choose Ponca City. Kat, who do you like to compare yourself to?
We have a lot of different ways we use this. We use this with retail. So we will compare ourselves to another, like Stillwater, which is 45 minutes down the road, but it's closer, and a bedroom community to Oklahoma City, Stillwater, Oklahoma. There's a lot of Stillwaters, and you don't realize that.
And by the way, we could add at least 11 more Stillwaters, but I'm just going to do Stillwater, Oklahoma. And you would really want to look at for expenses. So we look at additionally per household and then the raw numbers. And Kat, can we talk to more of the per household versus the raw numbers and how you use those 2 figures?
Well, what's nice is Stillwater is twice our size. They are over 50,000. So when you're looking at per household, you get a really even look at apples to apples. When you're looking at per thousand, it starts getting more differentiated as far as that's the actual number, and they are a bigger community than we are. And that happens with several of your different tools in here when you go from percentages to actuals. And we love that about this particular, because you can use totals or you can use percentages. Now, one thing, go back to the age distribution. What's nice is if somebody goes, wow, they've got more 20 to 29-year-olds, yes, they are a college community. They have the university there. When you can answer those questions when people ask them, it's very powerful because they're seeing it and you're answering the question in a logical manner. So, and this also makes them ask that question so you can continue the conversation. And that's what you're wanting, is you're wanting to continue that conversation. So, and that's what we love about comparing the communities.
So in a sense, what we're doing here is kind of teasing people with just enough information to know that they want that conversation with you, but they kind of have a little bit of homework done already.
Exactly. And for the most part, think of how you find information. Anybody in the world finds information. You want to know a little bit because, quite frankly, we don't want to look dumb when we're asking questions. We just want more information. So we want to find out enough to ask a good question, and this is a great way to do it. That's one of the reasons we have it on the website and we have it available, because you want people to go there. You want to drive people there. We talk about Go Ponca on the radio in a lot of different communities. We do press releases about our companies. We do the Facebook page. Last month, yeah, we're still in January. In December, we had a huge vessel, like 23 feet tall, had to move. Stoplights, had to lift power lines. It went from here in Ponca City to the Port of Catoosa, which is a little over 100 miles. And it took it like a week to get there. We had followers on Facebook. We had people posting footage. I mean, it was our big buzz. We had like 20,000 views on the video. And and we got more traffic on the website, and we got more phone calls about, hey, blah, blah, whatever the question happened to be. So we were really pleased about that as far as generating that, because it was cool. It was a big vessel. It was on a really big truck, and people were going 6 miles an hour behind it. So it was being talked about across the state of Oklahoma.
Well, and I'd love to talk a little bit more about what you're doing with Facebook. But first, I did want to just highlight that we do also show all the businesses within the Ponca City area. So here are the categories by NAICS code here. So we're not just looking at the labor force. We can actually look at total number of businesses and aggregates of revenue for different categories. We can also just simply hunt and peck, kind of click on a dot and get information on specific businesses.
Yes,
so there's a farm. Oh, I'm sorry, Kat, go ahead.
This is a really powerful button when you are, and we do not have any incentives for retail. That is not part of our mandate. Our mandate is industry and jobs. But you know, people find their way here asking questions about retail and the amount of money spent in retail and service. And this is a very powerful way to show not only the money spent, but also the jobs that are here already. And we have had an uptick. A lot of it has to do with oil and gas in this area, but we have had an uptick in retail, restaurants, and service coming to Ponca City. Yeah, especially the restaurant and eating places, yeah.
So I would think there's a couple data points to look at. One, we already showed the consumer spending. Here's another one, the existing full-service restaurants in the area. And then I kind of hinted at another one just a minute ago, which is showing the manufacturing plants in the community, which of course is providing that disposable income.
Yes, exactly.
And just as I've been showing, we can do any number of searches by different clusters of industry, by specific industries themselves, and we can also do specific business searches, either by NAICS code, street address, the business name, or we can just look for any company with a range of employees or revenue. And having done all this is actually a feature common to everything that I've shown. We can email this directly to a site selector or a business person. We can also share it on social media. Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook being the kind of the big ones right now. And I guess that's a good segue, Kat, to talk more about Facebook and other social media and how you leverage these tools, but also kind of more, I guess I'd call it qualitative information, like your boat.
Our boat?
The boat that you talked about earlier?
Oh, The
Ship.
It's, yeah, well, you get both from that. When we say vessel, we're talking about, it's 23 feet high and 110 feet long, I think it was. That thing was huge. It was actually being used as a munitions containment unit by the military. So it was really cool. But the alerts that we have right now, the screen that's up right now is my alerts with Google, and I am not Google Analytics savvy as of yet, but as I've had more and more conversations with Brian, I'm looking into it to get our website really where we can see who's looking at us and where they're taking that information. But the Google Alerts I've been using for a long time. PCDA is our actual company. Ponca City, that brings up things that have Ponca City in whatever reason it is. It may just be an obituary, but sometimes it's a full-blown article or we're referenced in some other part, which is really cool. Economic development initiatives, that tells me what other economic development people are doing across the nation. Cemetery tour, we launched a cemetery tour this year in Ponca City, which had absolutely nothing to do with economic development, but I'll tell you what, that cemetery tour, when those things happen, they are talked about, and that was cool information for me to have. Dorada Foods is one of our larger employers here in town, and I just like to hear when anything's happening in their industry. So
I'm just curious, out of this list, which one seems to get the most traction?
Ponca City and Oklahoma.
So people have somehow identified your city to begin with.
Well, it just depends. A lot of times people are referenced in from Ponca City or similar to Ponca City. It varies, like I said, everything from obituaries to all the way up to references in somebody else's presentation, a newspaper article. We had a big one. The Associated Press came out and did about one of our veterans that had transitioned from oil and gas over to owning his own coffee place, and that one went national. And so that one was one that came up quite a bit as well. But this is what it looks like if anybody out there has not done it for whatever reason. It is really easy to do. You sign up, you put in your keywords that you're looking for, and I only do this once a day because I don't want to get hit several times with emails, but they pull it all together in one email, and I get a daily blurb on what's going on with my terminology that I put in. And the links usually are good. Now this one is the Facebook Insights, and if you don't use your Facebook page, when you have cool stuff that happens, you never know whose interest you're going to pique. And this is a great place to put it. We've gotten a lot of views when we put our female welders up there, or when we put our girl power camp pictures up there, because kids, quite frankly, like to see pictures of themselves, and parents like to see pictures of themselves, and it's a great way to get your information out there in a different sector. But this shows you, you know, the likes and where they're coming from, how many times have things been shared off of your Facebook page, your engagement. You can do comparisons to other Facebook pages and see how you're ranking against similar or interested Facebook pages. It's just a really neat tool if you use Facebook. And if you don't use Facebook, I will tell you, you need to use Facebook. It's a great way to reach the parents of the kids that are going to be your future workforce.
Well, and I guess that was my question, Kat. How do you correlate what we're doing here with, you know, pictures of kids and their parents with more site selection or attracting businesses to the community?
Well, for the most part, every conversation we have boils down to workforce. I mean, even if it's site selectors or it's companies, they're looking at what's your workforce alignment. How are you going to be able to supply us with workforce when we move there in 6 months or in 5 years? You know, what is your alignment for that? And one of those things that we show is that outreach that we're doing to the schools, the engagement of current schools, parents, how we're trying to align the skills education with what that company needs. Some companies do need highly skilled, highly trained workers. Some of them need people who will show up and pass a drug test. So, quite frankly, I mean, that's just what we're hearing from a lot of our employers right now.
Okay, and this is, of course, just a screenshot of our demographic intelligence component, which we already talked about. I don't know if there was anything that you wanted to add in the context of using this with social media. Definitely it's something that you can do. I don't know if you've been sharing data from these components with your Facebook or your LinkedIn pages.
We do on Facebook. And we also have a weekly update we do every Friday, and a lot of times we'll put some of these components in there and link it straight back to the website. Those are about 300 to 350 people that receive our weekly update every Friday, and they are vested somehow with either Ponca City or industry. A lot of times there are business owners or our managers, retail service. You name it. Those are shareholders that we have here in Ponca City that we showcase this to, as well as some site selectors.
So in a sense, this is also serving as kind of that traditional economic development newsletter that is usually consumed by your stakeholders within the community.
Absolutely.
Got it. And then the last slide I'll show is this other, I guess, complementary information that you use from another data source.
Yes, now this gets really specific. This is where we start delving into information. Again, the GIS planning components and the widgets we have on the website is to start that conversation, to draw them in so they can see the topical level of information, dig down a little bit for themselves, but maybe they have a very specific question, and that gets them to pick up the phone or send an email, and then we can go, and that could be internally or externally. So that could be an existing business, retailer service, or it can be an industry person, or it can be somebody who's looking at Ponca City either for alignment or growth. And this one is just a question I had this week on machinists' earnings and what does that look like? What's the change in the earnings? Is there growth? What's the national level? And this came from MC, Economic Modeling.
Excellent, okay. And are there any other kind of, you've mentioned a couple of success stories so far. Are there any other that you'd like to add?
No, but I will tell you that do not neglect your nonprofits in town. They can be great cheerleaders for you. Our nonprofits love us because they know they can pick up the phone and find out demographic information at the drop of a hat. They know that they can find out what buildings are open. They know that we will help them if they have somebody who's coming through and doing a tour, and we can help them do anything that they need. They can be your biggest cheerleaders. And again, when I mentioned we're funded by a 0.5-cent sales tax, that is put to vote every 5 years. So our cheerleaders are very, very, very necessary for us. And a lot of these things we do, the secondary is how does that help the existing, our internal market here in Ponca City. So GIS fulfills both an internal and an external component as far as information dissemination and information marketing goes. And
very good.
I hate to sound like a commercial person, but really I do talk about you guys quite a bit because it is cool, and I think that's how this whole conversation started. Is the more information you can give people, it gives them the power to make very informed decisions, and that's one thing we want Go Ponca to be. We want it to be able to assist people to make those informed decisions.
Well, thank you. And Elisa, I think we should stop and ask if there are any questions.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's a great idea. If you want to send that back over to me, I could also put up my my screen here so people can see what where they can also address any questions if they've got them. So absolutely, we do have one question, which is about how we would go about if someone is interested in putting these kinds of widgets up on their website. They wanted to know, and they're working with a web design firm. They want to know if we would work directly with the web design firm to get all this together. Does it require the active facilitation of the economic developer themselves? And I can answer that actually, which is that in fact we we often work with web design firms, many different, some of the big ones and some of the small ones as well. Usually there's an initial introduction between the two firms, between ourselves and the web designers. And then the goal is always to minimize the amount of work required from you guys and the economic development organizations. We try and make this as easy as possible. So absolutely make that introduction, and then usually much of the information can be, handled directly by us. If there's any other questions, please feel free to put them in the question panel down at the bottom, and we will take a look at that. Yeah, I don't know if there was anything else that you or Kat would like to add. I think that was a really good tour of the different ways in which this data can be put online to access, available to people, because you might have an investor, a site selector checking out your website, in the middle of the night or on a weekend. You're not necessarily there to answer calls. You want to make sure that that data is up and running, and when they come, make sure you're open for business, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. Is there anything else that either of you would like to add?
Now, I would just have to say that you guys were really easy to work with. My web designer, when he finally connected, it was up in 2 hours. So it was
Great.
It was a very easy widget fix, and we just had to make room for it on our website as far as information goes. Yeah, it was great.
That's great to hear. Yeah, it's just really just a bit of code that needs to be pasted in. But as you say, we just need to make sure that the design accommodates it so you've got that room. Usually just a little bit of a matter of moving some stuff around. And that's really great to hear. Thank you for that feedback. Brian, is there anything else that you would like to add at this point?
No, I think we've covered it.
Great. Well,
Thank you.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very much, Kat, for your time and for your tour and for all of those great stories and your own personal experience. I know that that's really useful. And thank you, Brian, as well.